You all looking so damn scared. Act like you're going to the funeral. I'm the one fighting. George Foreman, George Foreman. You've been believing all that stuff you've been reading about how hard he hits. George Foreman. Not.
Well, yeah, you said the hardest you've ever been hit in your life was by George Foreman. Yep. You actually went back to the ring and asked your corner if all your teeth were still there.
Yeah. What was Foreman when he came back?
45 when he won the title. He was 33. I think he was 33 or 36 when he was coming back, and everybody was mocking him. And then he beat Michael Moore when he was 45 years old. He's the oldest man to ever win the heavyweight title.
He was arguably the hardest hitter in boxing, knocking out 68 of his 81 opponents and becoming the oldest champion in the sport at the time. Sadly, the living legend George Foreman has passed away at the age of 76, leaving behind an undying legacy. As the boxing world bids farewell to this iconic figure, now is the perfect moment to reflect on the mark he left in boxing history and hear what other legends have said about Big George. On March 21st, 2025, the world mourned the loss of a true icon when it was announced that George Foreman had passed away at a hospital in Houston, Texas. This news reverberated throughout the boxing community and beyond, stirring memories of a man who for decades had been synonymous with raw power and ferocious knockouts. George Foreman was not only a formidable presence inside the ring, but he was also one of the most respected figures in the history of heavyweight boxing. His devastating power, which struck fear into the hearts of his opponents, left a lasting imprint on the sport. When people think of the hardest punchers in boxing, many naturally gravitate toward the name Mike Tyson. Tyson, known as Iron Mike, terrorized the heavyweight division in the 1980s and 90s with his explosive speed and crushing power. However, even Tyson himself has acknowledged that when it comes to pure, unadulterated punching power, no one compares to George Foreman. In an interview, Tyson humbly admitted that although fans often regard him as the heaviest puncher, he believes George Foreman is in a league of his own.
George Foreman too. It's hit the bell. Boom. That's how it works out. Get sweat.
He used to break the bags.
Yeah.
He used to knock him down. Yeah.
Heavy puncher.
The heaviest?
Yeah.
See, I thought.
Tyson went on to explain that the misconception about his punching power stems from his speed. He was faster than Foreman, which allowed him to deliver his knockout blows with a swiftness that stunned opponents. But Tyson emphasized that when it came to raw brute force, Foreman stood head and shoulders above the rest. His punches were like sledgehammers, capable of doing damage unlike anything Tyson or anyone else could produce.
That was you.
I can't match somebody's power who's that big and that much mass. You know, the only thing that allowed me to be excited because I do it faster than the other guys.
This sentiment is echoed by renowned boxing trainer and commentator Teddy Atlas, who also weighed in on the Tyson-Foreman debate. Atlas, a seasoned veteran of the sport, has studied and trained some of the greatest fighters in history. He believes that while both men possessed incredible power, George Foreman was the more powerful of the two.
Similar to Tyson, but I think he was stronger than Tyson in other ways, ultimately. But
according to Atlas, what sets Foreman apart from Tyson and makes him the greater fighter overall is his remarkable journey of redemption. Foreman famously returned to the ring after a decade-long retirement and at the age of 45 became the oldest heavyweight champion in history. This triumphant comeback, coupled with his ability to overcome personal demons, cemented Foreman's legacy as one of boxing's all-time greats. Teddy Atlas points out that while Tyson's career was plagued by controversies and struggles, Foreman was able to find peace within himself and rewrite his story.
Say it. Call me a hater again. Come on. Go ahead. But that's the one thing. That's why he's greater. He's greater for me than Tyson. And Tyson's great. But he's greater because he could face that. Tyson could never. Face those shortcomings, and George faced.
Over the course of his storied career, George Foreman fought and often defeated some of the most legendary names in boxing. His iconic bouts with Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Evander Holyfield are etched in the annals of boxing history. These battles showcased not only his incredible power, but also the respect that his opponents had for him, even in defeat. Foreman's brutal knockouts of Frazier, for instance, are still regarded as some of the most devastating in the sport's history. Evander Holyfield, another legend of the ring, has often been asked to compare the power of Foreman and Tyson. When asked who hit harder, Holyfield didn't hesitate to give the edge to George Foreman. In an interview, Holyfield recounted that the hardest punch he ever took was from Big George. In their fight, Foreman hit him with such force that Holyfield found himself asking his corner whether his teeth were still intact.
Then quit. I prayed and then quit. And George Foreman was a harder puncher than Mike Tyson? Well, I wouldn't say he's the hardest puncher than Mike Tyson, but he hit me one time and my feet froze up like this, and I've never been hit like that before, and I remember coming back to the corner asking did he knock all my teeth out. They say, you all right? And you know, when somebody just tell you all right real quick, you may not be all right.
Holyfield further elaborated in another interview, explaining that Foreman's punch was so powerful that he wasn't even sure what had hit him. It was that overwhelming.
Man, you know, to get hit, and you know, and I asked him, I said, what did he hit me with? I'm like, all I know, I got cracked, and I go, what did he hit me with? He said, he'll hit you with a looping right.
Joe Frazier, who famously faced Foreman twice, also shared his thoughts on the power of Big George. Frazier, a tough and durable fighter in his own right, was no stranger to taking hard punches, but he described Foreman as a big, powerful fella who knows how to throw a punch.
And stuff like that. And so, you know, I had people talking about, well, he did this, he did that. I said, look, hey, I said, boxing is not all boxing. I said, no. I said, he got to try to hit me.
Frazier's fights against Foreman were brutal affairs, with Foreman knocking him down multiple times. It was during these encounters that the boxing world truly realized just how much of a force Foreman was, and Frazier, like many others, could only marvel at the immense power of his opponent. The renowned sportscaster and commentator Jim Lampley couldn't hold back his emotions when reflecting on the passing of George Foreman. Lampley, who had witnessed many iconic moments in boxing, was particularly moved by Foreman's ability to overcome life's challenges and his unwavering faith throughout his journey. Lampley recalled one such moment that stayed with him forever. Instances where Foreman, after triumphing over adversity, would humbly give thanks to his Lord. Lampley described these moments with tears in his eyes, and the way he conveyed his feelings was nothing short of extraordinary. His words painted a picture of Foreman not just as a fighter, but as a man of deep conviction and gratitude, inspiring everyone who witnessed his journey.
He wore the trunks from Zaire, and he memorized the lyrics to The Impossible Dream.
Wow.
And he came to the ring singing The Impossible Dream, and he made it happen. It's one of the most uncanny things I've ever seen in a sports event, and certainly the most uncanny thing I ever saw in a box.
Another heavyweight legend, Lennox Lewis, shared how much of an influence George Foreman had on his own career. According to Lewis, having Foreman as a commentator during his fights allowed him to gain valuable insights into his performances. Foreman's observations and critiques became a source of guidance for Lewis, helping him understand what aspects of his technique he needed to refine to reach the next level. Lewis admitted that Foreman's analysis of his fights had a direct impact on his development as a fighter.
Talk to him. You know, George for me helped my career just by commentating on my fights because I listened to him.
Lewis also highlighted how deeply he respected Foreman's opinions. Whenever George pointed out a specific technique that needed improvement, Lewis listened intently. He would take Foreman's words to heart, heading back to the gym to practice and perfect what Foreman had suggested. The advice from the legendary Foreman meant everything to Lewis, motivating him to become a better fighter with each lesson.
If I would go into a fight and they would say, yeah, he's not throwing that jab enough, he's not being authoritative with the jab, I would go and train and come back and be authoritative with that jab. You know, because that's what George said. He knows, he's been there.
Okay.
Even Riddick Bowe, a former heavyweight champion who competed during the same era as George Foreman, showed his deep admiration for the legendary boxer. Although they were potential rivals in the ring, Bowe never hesitated to express his respect for Foreman. In a memorable moment caught on camera, Bowe affectionately kissed Foreman's head during an interview, a gesture that spoke volumes about the camaraderie and respect shared between these two warriors.
Hey George, can I do something I want to do for a long time? All right, let me kiss it, man.
Joe Rogan, a popular podcaster and commentator, also offered his thoughts on Foreman, describing him as an immensely large and powerful man. Rogan humorously mentioned that George's fist was as big as a cigar box, a testament to the sheer physicality that contributed to his legendary knockout power.
Smaller, too. George is a very big man. George has he has hands that are like the size, his fists are like the size of a cigar box. They're giant fists, which is a big factor in punching power, you know?
Rogan continued to emphasize Foreman's terrifying presence in the ring. Despite not having the speed of some of his contemporaries, Foreman made up for it with his overwhelming strength, a trait that Rogan said made him an incredibly dangerous fighter. His ability to generate such raw power with every punch set him apart from other fighters, and Rogan's admiration for this unique quality was clear.
He's kind of slow. He just has thunderous power. He was never like a real fast guy like Ali or any of those other guys. He was just thunderous, ridiculous power. George was just terrifying.
George Foreman.
Roy Jones Jr., one of the most respected and skilled boxers of his era, expressed deep sorrow over the passing of George Foreman. In reflecting on Foreman's death, Jones acknowledged the monumental impact that Big George had on the sport of boxing. According to Jones, Foreman's influence extended far beyond his own legendary career. He was instrumental in shaping the careers of countless fighters and left an indelible mark on the sport that they all cherished.
What up, it's your boy Roy Jones Jr. I want to say my condolences go out to George Foreman's family. What a beautiful family, what a beautiful guy. A guy who really made a big impact on the sport of boxing, the sport that we love.
Jones went on to confess that Foreman was not only a remarkable boxer, but also an exceptionally kind and generous person. In Jones' eyes, Foreman was a role model for everyone in the boxing world, someone who embodied the qualities of both greatness in the ring and humility outside of it. Jones expressed that the world had lost not just an iconic athlete, but a truly extraordinary human being, a man who was, in many ways, an even greater person than he was a boxer. The boxing world, and indeed the world at large, mourned the loss of someone who stood for much more than just championship titles.
It's very difficult to express the feelings of losing such a great person who not only came back and turned into a good fighter, but turned into an even greater person. He was an awesome fighter to come back and win the title at 45 years old, the oldest heavyweight champion ever. And he's an awesome person to come back and have the perseverance and the faith in God that he showed in the end. So my condolences go out again to the Foreman family.
As these reflections show, George Foreman left an indelible mark on the sport of boxing, not only through his power and achievements, but also through the respect and admiration he earned from his peers, commentators, and fans alike. His legacy extends far beyond his knockout power. It's a story of perseverance, humility, and a relentless pursuit of greatness that inspired generations of fighters. But what about you, fight fans? Where do you rank Big George Foreman among the greatest boxers of all time? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.